somewhere along the lines of not that atheism and communism are synonymous, because I don't think that you're arguing that, but that communism leads to atheism rather than capitalism, which leads to something other than atheism. Is that kind of more your argument? Because you're saying that if you have a communist state, you're more likely to be an atheist. So therefore, communism and somehow atheism are intertwined in that regards. Is that somewhat what you're going for? What you're trying to just explain on Twitter?
I think. Well, I look at this little quote right here from Vladimir Lenin. He says, "Atheism is a natural and inseparable part of Marxism, of the theory and practice of scientific socialism. Our program necessarily includes the propaganda of atheism." So that's what Lenin said, and so there's a relationship. But Marxism, if you look at the Communist Manifesto and you look at item number 22, he's very explicit about his beliefs in atheism and how that relates to Marxism. And the people who have practiced using the Marxist doctrines, the people who've used that, such as Lenin, Stalin, and Mao Zedong, who've built their systems off of that, are also atheists, and they've also purged religion. So it just sort of all goes together. Now, I'm not saying if you're an atheist, that doesn't mean you're a communist by any stretch. There's tons and tons of atheists who are not communists. We've got lots of atheists here in the United States who are not communists. So I'm just saying that if you're in those systems, there's a greater possibility that religion is being purged.
Okay, I just want a real quick clarification, because again, I want to make sure we got you right. Are you saying that communism tends to lead to atheism, or atheism tends to lead to communism? Because there's a huge distinction there, and I think that one's a lot more controversial than the other.
That's a good question.
Are you saying that atheism?
Let me see if
I try. Think about that carefully, because I mean that is a very big difference between those two statements. Because if you think that atheism leads to communism, then I think we have a talk that we all could agree on that would be interesting to have a conversation on.
Yeah, but only one of them's true, though.
I would like to. The first one, I wouldn't contest that too much, but the second one is contestable, and I think that's what Frustrated Atheist was reading into your tweets. Frustrated Atheist, was that kind of what you were reading when she was tweeting this out? That somehow, if you're atheist, it's more likely to lead into communism for the state. That's how I was.
No,
reading.
I just
maybe it was just me.
Like I said, whenever I read it, it showed as if the two are synonymous. That's the way it read.
I didn't read that. Yeah, I didn't see that with her. She clarified that they're not synonymous in future tweets.
Okay. And that's fine. But we can go down. If what is it? What was it that you said? Atheism leading into communism.
If that's what she's claiming.
I don't think I'd make that claim, but you could go back and wonder, why did Stalin, do what he did? Why did he choose the communist doctrine? Why did he choose Marxism, and build off that? It's probably interesting. I don't know enough about the history of Karl Marx or Stalin or Lenin to know exactly what motivated them to follow those doctrines.
I think
it would be very interesting. It would be very interesting to understand why. Well, it would be very interesting to understand why Stalin would, since Stalin himself was a Christian and he was going through seminary and everything to be a leader within the Catholic Church, and then went and obtained power instead. So it would be very interesting to figure out why that happened that way.
One thing from history, and I've been studying history for a while, is people use different ideas, such as the church or religion, to propel their own ideological, experiments. I think a lot of the regimes have used Christian imagery at first, and then when they have their experiment in hand, their civilization going the way that they want, they'll often denounce the church. They'll often denounce Christians, take away individual rights, those things that are implied in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I think a more important issue we have to grapple with, just to progress the conversation, is the basis. It is the basis of ideas, the basis of humanity. Is it materialism, or does it have something to do with with ideas? Are we just the product of our DNA, or are there also cultural innovations that have transformed the West? So I think I would much rather talk about that and to progress the conversation.
Okay. Frustrated Atheist, how would you respond to that?
Sorry, I stepped away for a minute. I didn't hear a word he said. My fiance came in. Can you go ahead and repeat that, sir?
Maybe we should let's try to center in on let's center in on a topic here that we can all agree on to move forward here, so we're all on the same page. How about we talk about the cultural impact of either Christianity or atheism on a society? That way, Josh can speak to the historical aspect of it, and that'll give us maybe a starting point to go from here. Because it sounds like we cleared up SJ's tweet, so maybe let's center in on the effects. All right, Joshua, you want to go ahead and
all right. Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
I want to read to you one little thing. It says Aristotle. Well, Aristotle, he began his philosophy, and he said that it begins with a sense of wonder about the world. And he said the biggest question we can ask is whether about the origin of the universe, about complexity, how things arise. Aristotle once said this: if shipbuilding was in the wood, we would have ships by nature. Things come about by design, and the way we perceive the world through a cultural context of history, filled with church history, filled with theology, that gives us ways to interpret the world, where we now have human rights. Back in antiquity, slavery was, well, throughout history rather, slavery was endemic to civilization. It's only in the West that slavery has been abolished. And it's done that twice. Rodney Stark, in his, I think I have the book somewhere around here. Let me see if I have the book right here. The Triumph of Christianity. He talks about this issue, how ideas have consequences, and it's because of these liberal ideas, this classical liberalism that has really shaped humanity and gave people rights. And property rights was a big thing that shaped the development of the West. So was religion.
Okay, I have a question here. How does this topic at all relate to atheism?
I think let me speak a little bit to that.
Atheism was.
I think we should let's show about.
Well, okay.
Let me build on that a little bit, because I think that
go ahead. I
interesting.
think we need to clarify this. Go ahead, Esther.
Well, I think what we should talk about maybe are current trends. So if we want to look at what's going on in the world, look at the United States. So about 86% people in the United States identify themselves as theists. We've got a good portion of those. Most of them are Christians. It's something like 78% Christian or something like that. So the United States is sort of an outlier with respect to Western nations right now, because some of the Western nations are trending towards atheism. We have a lot of the European nations right now that have become increasingly what they say is rational or secular, and numerous studies have indicated. So there are these trends, but the foundations upon which the European countries were built over the past millennia has basically been Christian foundations. So we've got Christian universities. Major universities founded through Christianity and that kind of thing. So Western societies are still reaping the benefits of the foundations in Christianity.
Okay. Frustrated?
Boy, that got quiet. Wow, dead silence.
Yeah, sorry.
So I have no idea what the hell was just said. But
You want to summarize
Well,
that?
let me
clarify.
Do you have a?
Does anybody know why they're
Do
here
you
today?
have a? I don't know if any of y'all have gone to university or other than SJ. And it doesn't make you smart or not. You can get smart in a library with $100 of fines, I guess. But if we're going to think that the university is a good thing, we have to think why it came about, the cultural context of why it came about. And it's because of Christianity, why it came about.
What came about?
The university system.
Okay.
The earliest universities started in the 12th century. In the 13th century, the University of Paris, Bologna, and Oxford and Cambridge. These were the earliest universities. They were started by a group called the Scholastic philosophers, the Scholastic Christians, the schoolmen who argued and grappled with the works of Aristotle, and they weren't inclined to accept everything Aristotle said. You had a mixture of Aristotelian and Platonic ideas and how they interpret with Christianity and what it means. So you had a lot of these things develop around that time in the Middle Ages. It's scholasticism. No matter what you say about the Catholic Church, and I'm not Catholic, it is because of Catholic Christians that the university system arose.
But I don't think anybody's disagreeing with that. But it's 2018, though. We have secular society now. We have secular institutions. Yes. Where it came from is interesting. That's historical. Where we are now, that's, I think, more interesting to have a discussion on.
Well, I want to clarify what I was just trying to say, because I think I went over. I think I might have said something where I maybe didn't fill in some of the foundation first that I was talking about. There's a really interesting person called Ronald Engelhardt, and he's out of the University of Michigan, and he has produced over these last couple of decades, he's produced a series of world values surveys, and he's basically noticed some trends in countries away from traditionalism and away from religiosity and towards what he labeled as secular and rational. And so I think if we want to talk about what's going on today, we should talk about that, because that's what's going on right now in European countries. We do have a foundation upon which the countries were built in Christianity, but current trends are leaning towards more liberalism. They're leaning towards more socialism. In fact, most of the places in Europe, we've got a lot of social democracies, meaning that they're mixed economies. They've got some private ownership and some public ownership. So that's something going on right now. Now, how does that?
I want to add something about the kids. The kids, my students.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, no, he froze.
He froze.
So let him come back. Because I again, none of this has to do with the topic. This is all over the place. SJ.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to bring it back to modernity? Let's talk about modern times. Is it advantageous to have a atheistic society over a theistic society as far as our educational system? Because obviously, I think you would agree with secularism. You want to see secularism around. You don't want to violate that, correct?
I agree that church and government should be separated. Yes.
Okay.
So
you're secularist. Okay. Awesome. So do you want to maybe run the narrative that you're going to promote theism is a better way to have a society than an atheistic society? And forgetting the social political aspect of it, because I don't see how that's intertwined with atheism at all. I just don't. But you're arguing that the theist position is somehow more beneficial to society over an atheistic position. I think that's the core of your argument, if I'm not mistaken.
I think when people feel like there's an external force of accountability, that they can't do something in secret and get away with it because there's an external force that is holding them accountable. I think that's very helpful to society. I think it gives people, you're not likely to sneak around. You're not likely to cheat on your spouse. You're not likely to do all these anything that's even worse, morally egregious sort of activities, because you know that you're going to be held accountable at some point. And I think that's a good foundation for people to believe in. And so I think theism, in and of itself, the idea of a moral force holding you accountable, I think that's really important.